My name is Noah, and this is my story. If you are listening to this, you are my descendant, and I will tell you why. The world has been struck by an unimaginable catastrophe, leaving only my family and me as the last survivors. It's a surreal situation. Everyone is dead, aside from my family. The scale of the destruction is unfathomable, and the loss of life is simply heartbreaking. I can't help but ask myself what went wrong and how it all happened so quickly. This is a judgment beyond measure. How did this happen? How did we get here? Numerous forces came together to make the flood happen. The sequence of events leading up to the Great Flood began with the creation of the sons of God even before the world itself was created. These sons of God are believed to have possessed supernatural powers and were considered divine beings. However, it is said that one of these divine beings rebelled against God and became a fallen being, setting the stage for the catastrophic events that would follow. Heaven was originally intended to be their home for all eternity, but they've now fallen from it. What caused all of this to occur? Angels are celestial beings who were created with the sole purpose of dwelling in heaven with God. Their primary function is to worship Him and carry out His commands. They were designed to bring glory to God and serve as messengers between Him and humans. Unlike people who were created to live on earth, angels were created to live in heaven. These celestial beings, known as angels, decided to abandon their origin in heaven. They departed from their starting point and ventured forth into our world with their own agenda. They left their beginning. In the Garden of Eden, a paradise where Adam and Eve could live in peace and harmony, Satan launched his first assault on God's authority on earth. Adam and Eve fell and were cursed. Even now, my family still suffers tremendously from this curse. You see, farming and sustenance are very tough. The Lord said, "Cursed is the ground because of you. Through a painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food, until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you will return." Now, my ancestors and I have had to sweat to survive. God was disappointed because of their disobedience. They could no longer stay in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve had already made a mistake by eating the forbidden fruit. As a consequence of their disobedience, God was filled with disappointment, and Adam and Eve were no longer permitted to remain in the idyllic paradise that was the Garden of Eden. The fateful error committed resulted in their eviction from the serene sanctuary they had once called home. Adam and Eve had sons and daughters, including Cain and Abel. With the growth of their family came the birth of civilization itself. As Adam and Eve's children grew, they took wives and had their own families. The population began to grow steadily. Cain slayed his brother and started a very evil and dangerous lineage, and this lineage did not call the name of God. Fortunately, Eve gave birth to my ancestor Seth, and the world began another godly people through him. Humanity was divided into two paths, the line of Cain and the line of Seth. As the population of the world grew, so did the prevalence of sin. The people were often unkind to one another, and their actions were filled with deceit, theft, and even murder. During this era, men were blessed with extraordinarily long lives, sometimes lasting hundreds of years. It was a different era, a time when humanity was still closely connected to its origins, and the world itself was younger and fresh. Adam, the first man, lived to be 930 years old. Yes, you heard that right. 9 centuries. He had children who also lived extraordinarily long lives. His son Seth lived for 912 years, and Seth's son Enoch lived for 905 years. As the generations passed, each man fathered children and taught them the ways of the earth, how to cultivate land and care for animals, and also how to connect with God. This line of people was special. They carried the seed of humanity's first union with fallen angels. But despite their long lives and deep wisdom, these early people were not immune to the problems that often plague mankind. Issues like jealousy, anger, and sometimes even violence. However, there was a man, my great-grandfather, called Enoch. Enoch is the man that never died. In my family's history, my great-grandfather held a deep and sincere appreciation for God's love, which he expressed through his unwavering loyalty and fervent passion. As a result of his devotion, he became a conduit for the mighty power of God and was blessed with great manifestations of this power throughout his life. Interestingly, my great-grandfather's faith was so strong that he was often able to prophesy future events with remarkable accuracy. In fact, he even spoke about the Lord's coming judgment against the general populace long before it came to pass. Enoch always prophesied about the Lord's coming judgment against the general people. When Enoch lived 65 years, he became the father of Methuselah, my grandfather. Methuselah's life could have predicted my life, as his name meant when he died, it would happen. As the years rolled by, communities of tribes and clans emerged, each tracing their ancestry back to one of the original patriarchs. These groups of people ventured across the land, exploring new territories to call their own. As the number of people increased, so did their needs and aspirations. The traditional roles of herding and farming were no longer sufficient to sustain their livelihoods, and they began to explore new avenues. Families grew into tribes, and people started taking on different roles and professions, ranging from skilled artisans to learned scholars. These changes marked the first steps towards the evolution of civilization, as people began to organize themselves into complex social structures, with each person contributing their unique skills and abilities to the community. Now we are here, 10 generations from Adam. Life continues to present its challenges, as the ground remains severely hardened after the curse of Adam. The men of our time find it increasingly difficult to procure sustenance and provide for their families. My father Lamech lived for 182 years and had me. He named me Noah, saying that I was to bring comfort and relief to our people who toil and labor painfully due to the cursed ground. This is who I am. I was born for the purpose of bringing relief. The world is an evil place. The Nephilim have invaded the world. Now, insert into this chaotic world an unusual development. The Nephilim were special and not like regular people. They were strong and larger than life, but they made the world's problems even worse. They were admired, feared, and even worshipped, pulling people further away from the true God who had created them. Their might made them objects of fascination, but they were part of a world spiraling further into chaos and sin. Evil legions began to infiltrate humanity. When human beings began to increase in number on the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Who were the sons of God? Like I said, these were fallen angels. These fallen angels descended on earth and gave birth to the Nephilim, or giants. The fallen, these beings corrupted the whole world. These angels, in rebellion against God, lusted after human women and took the human women. There were also giants on the earth in those days. Giants are the unnatural offspring of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. They were the mighty men of old, men of renown. This is the world I reside in, a world of giants and the Nephilim, a world of evil. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of mankind was great on the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. The earth was not a place of peace or kindness, but one filled with sin, violence, and moral corruption. Picture a bleak world where individuals are consumed by their own insatiable desires, relentlessly pursuing their self-serving agendas without regard for the well-being of others. The concepts of honesty, integrity, and kindness are not only underappreciated, but also barely understood. Instead, people resort to deceit and manipulation as the norm to achieve their goals. The society is characterized by a dog-eat-dog mentality, where everyone is out for themselves, and the very foundation of the community is ripped apart by selfishness and malevolence. In such an environment, families are not sanctuaries of love and support, but rather battlefields of deceit and betrayal. Neighbors don't look out for each other. They look to exploit one another. Governments are not institutions of justice, but rather systems of oppression, upholding the rule of the powerful over the weak. It was in this context that God saw the wickedness of mankind. Spiritual and moral decline. God's grief over creation. Humanity, the crown jewel of creation, had lost its way. Rather than living in harmony with each other in the world, people were consumed by violence, wickedness, and deceit. God looked down upon his creation and felt an immense sorrow. It was a divine grief, a sorrow so deep it transcended human understanding. Imagine a parent, heartbroken over the actions of a wayward child, yet infinitely magnified. And so, in his great pain, God made a difficult decision. The Lord sought to destroy mankind, whom he had created from the surface of the earth, not only man, but the animals and the crawling things and the birds of the air, because it deeply grieves me to see mankind sin, and I regret that I have made them. God was upset by the actions of the people he made, and was left with no other option to heal a world spiraling into chaos. The Spirit of the Lord did not strive with man forever. Judgment was on its way. Fortunately, I had found grace in the eyes of the Lord. I was saved by an act of divine sovereignty. Every intent of the thoughts of man was only evil continually. This says a lot. There was no aspect of man's nature not corrupted by sin. The world was a place where the population was exploding at an alarming rate. Perversion had become commonplace. Demonic activity was widespread. Constant evil resided in the heart of man, and corruption and violence were rampant. God had grown weary of this state of affairs. Then God set his gaze on me. I was a just man, and very different from my generations. I had a close relationship with God and walked in his ways. Unlike many others of my time, I remained untainted by the corruption and wickedness that plagued the world. My family and I did not engage in sinful unions with the fallen angels. While I certainly cannot claim to be perfect like God, I made a sincere effort to follow his commands and live according to his will. My family and I followed the ways of the Lord. My family consisted of 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. I obeyed God's commands as best as I could and understood them then. In the midst of a generation consumed by sin and debauchery, I stood out as a shining example of righteousness. My life was characterized by blamelessness and obedience, and I walked with God in a close and intimate relationship, just like my great-grandfather Enoch. While others indulged in the pleasures of the flesh, I found my joy in serving and obeying the Lord. Every moment of my life was a testament to the love and faithfulness of God, and I cherished the opportunity to walk with him every step of the way. God had considered me as righteous. The population of the earth was corrupt, absolutely depraved, spiritually and morally putrid in God's sight, and the land was filled with violence, desecration, infringement, outrage, assault, and lust for power. Because of the corruption and violence on the earth and the extent of the corruption, God told me that he would judge the wicked along with the earth. God said to me, I intend to make an end of all that lives, for through men the land is filled with violence, and behold, I am about to destroy them together with the land. It points to a deep and serious problem in the world at that time. In times of great corruption and impending judgment, I received a divine message from God that was intended to save me and my family. Despite the grim circumstances, there was a glimmer of hope in the form of grace. Instead of completely wiping out humanity, God chose to preserve a small group of people, a remnant. I did not deserve or earn this grace. Rather, I stumbled upon it. Grace cannot be earned, but it can be discovered by anyone who seeks it. It is said that where sin abounded, grace abounded even more, and this was certainly true in my case. God said to me, "Make yourself an ark of gopher wood." God said, "Make yourself." This means this was my project. I was not to simply contract it out to someone else. In order to prepare for the great flood, God instructed me to construct in it rooms, including stalls, pens, coops, nests, cages, and compartments, to house all of the animals and their provisions. To ensure the longevity of these structures, I was also instructed to coat both the inside and outside of each room with pitch, or bitumen, a natural substance that works to waterproof the wood. This proved to be an effective method of preservation, as the ark was able to withstand the flood for a prolonged period of time. It is possible that the preservation of the ark serves a greater purpose as a reminder of past judgment and a warning of a future one. This is the way you are to make it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits. 450 by 75 by 45. The ark was as long as a 30-story building, about 450 feet or 150 meters, and it was about 75 feet, 25 meters wide, and 45 feet, 15 meters high. What is described is not really a boat but a well-ventilated barge, meant only to float and not to sail anywhere. After all, an ark is a chest, not a ship. This refers to the shoebox shape of the vessel. You shall make a window for light and ventilation for the ark, and finish it to at least a cubit, 18 inches from the top, and set the entry door of the ark in its side, and you shall make it with lower, second, and third decks. The shape of the ark was reminiscent of a box, but it was massive in size easily. Its top portion had a cubit-wide opening measuring 18 inches or half a meter. A window was constructed in the upper section of the ark, providing a view of the outside world. The window came with a covering that could be opened and closed, allowing for flexibility in controlling the amount of light and air that entered inside the ark. As I started on the construction of the enormous ark, I couldn't help but wonder about the reason behind this mammoth task. God had simply instructed me to build the barge and that he would soon bring judgment on the earth. However, at that point in time, I had no idea what that meant. I couldn't fathom the purpose of this colossal vessel. All I knew was that I had to trust in God's plan and follow his instructions. In the past, I received a divine message from the Lord, and it said, "You shall make it." I followed through with the instructions and created what was required of me. Afterward, the Lord shared with me the details of his plans. For behold, I, even I, will bring a flood of waters on the earth, to destroy all life under the heavens in which there is the breath and spirit of life. Everything on the earth shall die. I was summoned to play a pivotal role in the most significant judgment and greatest salvation the world had ever experienced. It was an extraordinary moment filled with great responsibility and purpose. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark. Despite the dramatic judgment coming, God will make a covenant with me. God will also use me to save a remnant of each animal so the earth can be populated with people and animals after the flood. God then said, "Everything that is on the land shall die, but I will establish my covenant, solemn promise, formal agreement with you, and you shall come into the ark, you and your 3 sons and your wife, and your sons' wives with you, and of every living thing found on land, you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of fowls and birds according to their kind, of animals according to their kind, of every crawling thing of the ground according to its kind. 2 of every kind shall come to you to keep them alive. Also, take with you every kind of food that is edible, and you shall collect and store it, and it shall be food for you and for them." God also commanded me to take all the food I could. There was a lot of food for me and all the animals. This would be the home of around 35,000 pairs of animals. Did you know that the average size of a land animal is actually smaller than that of a sheep? In fact, the ark would be big enough to carry a whopping 136,560 sheep in just half of its total capacity. This left ample space for all of the other essential provisions, such as food, water, and shelter for both animals and humans alike. It's truly remarkable to think about the sheer scale and capacity of an incredible vessel. God here makes me the man of his counsel, communicating his purpose to destroy this wicked world by water. The secret of the Lord is with me today. Thus I did, according to all that God commanded me. I followed every instruction given by God with utmost faith and obedience. I was devoted and committed to fulfilling God's will without hesitation or doubt. I encountered multiple obstacles along the way, which made the process quite time-consuming and demanding. Do I have the manpower? I still have my grandfather, Methuselah, and my father, Lamech. I may have to hire a construction team to build the ark. Although some individuals may not align with my opinions, it should not hinder them from engaging in paid employment. The Lord said, "Of every clean animal you shall take with you 7 pair, the male and his female, and of animals that are not clean, 2 each the male and his female, also of the birds of the air, 7 pair, the male and the female, to keep the offspring alive on the surface of the earth. For in 7 days I am going to cause it to rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will destroy, blot out, wipe away every living thing that I have made from the surface of the earth. So I did all that the Lord commanded me. When given this staggering job to do, I did it. I simply obeyed. This took a great number of materials and years, yet I did not shrink from what God told me to do. I was a preacher of righteousness. I had made public proclamations to people. I took my family and me a considerable amount of time, roughly 120 years, to complete the ark's construction. During this extended period, I was able to interact with the individuals around me and share the purpose behind the building of the ark. Through my active obedience, I also expressed my disapproval of the world's ways and embraced the inheritance of righteousness obtained through faith. It's a tragic tale of disobedience and rebellion against the truth. Despite being warned about the impending danger, they chose to ignore the message and refused to seek safety in the ark. During the time when disbelief was rampant, my message was not limited to verbal proclamations. The construction of the ark itself was a manifestation of his commitment to righteousness. Every strike of the hammer and sound of a nail being driven into the wood reminded the people that they needed to repent and turn toward righteousness before it was too late. The ark was not just a physical structure, but a powerful symbol of the impending judgment that was to come. My contemporaries ignored the message that would have saved them. Everything continued as it had always been. The scene was one of merriment and celebration. People were feasting on food, sipping on drinks, exchanging vows in marriage, and reveling in their own pleasures while turning a blind eye to the existence of God. But then, the day arrived when I entered the ark, and the skies opened up with a deluge of rain that destroyed every living being that had been too preoccupied to heed the warnings. For 120 years, I devoted my life to preaching righteousness to the masses. I hoped to inspire change in their hearts and minds, but alas, it seemed my words fell on deaf ears. Despite my efforts, my message appeared to have gone unnoticed and unheeded. I wonder, will they ever open their hearts and turn their gaze toward the path of righteousness that I tried so fervently to guide them toward? I built the ark 1,600 years after God created intelligent humans who could innovate. Since lifespans approached 1,000 years ago, the achievements of the pre-flood world's best innovators have been remarkable. We could build cities, make musical instruments, and work with metal. My culture was at its industrial zenith while I worked on the ark. The task of constructing the ark was daunting, requiring immense physical effort, significant expenses, and endless patience. The entire process was fraught with danger and uncertainty. To outside observers, it may have seemed like a foolish and absurd undertaking. I toiled away at the project for decades, even as those mocked me and made fun of my efforts. Despite all this, I remained steadfast in my faith and continued to build the ark, knowing it was my duty and destiny. My job was to obey God and trust Him to supply what I lacked, including the wisdom to build the sturdy ship and finish the project on schedule. Can you imagine what it must have felt like when the ark was finally completed? However, during this period, I lost my father. He would not be around for the judgment. After some years, even the prophet Enoch would be gone. My ancestor Enoch would not come with me for the ride as he was called to God. His word should have been taken seriously as he was taken from this life so that he did not experience death. He could not be found because God had taken him away. My ancestors are gone. They will not face this cataclysmic event that I would face. Then, the very day arrived, the day that ended all. My generation would be reduced to me. Most from my generation would end today. All those I grew up with will meet their fate today." Then the Lord said to me, "Come into the ark, you with all your household, for you alone I have seen as righteous, doing what is right before me in this generation." The idea is that God was in the ark and would be with me in the ark. So he called me to come into the ark with him. The Lord did not say to me, "Go into the ark," but "Come," plainly implying that God was himself in the ark, waiting to receive me and my family into the big ship that was to be their place of refuge while all the other people on the face of the earth were drowned. It was a once-in-a-lifetime moment, one that I would never forget, as I stood inside the ark, surrounded by the animals in the presence of God. The only people with me were my own family. Do you know what it feels like to lose all those you knew from childhood? I tried my best. I warned them for a long time. I would lose every single person that was not my close enemy. Today, everybody will be judged. The air was filled with the sounds of thousands of creatures, each one making its unique noise. The cacophony of honks, squawks, squeals, and shrieks were almost overwhelming. And yet, amidst all the chaos, there was a sense of harmony, as if every creature knew its place in the grand scheme of things. The ark loomed large, its massive form bristling with activity as the last of the animals were loaded on board. The sun was setting slowly, casting long shadows across the landscape and painting the sky with brilliant shades of orange and red. After all those years of hard work, we had finally finished. In some animals, God has created a migratory instinct, which can operate in an amazing manner. This was the largest and most complete menagerie that was ever gathered together. It was not collected by human skill. Divine power alone could have accomplished such a task as that. 2 by 2, they went into the ark. God never has a problem getting the animals to do what he wants. This was a very unique moment. My father was no longer here to witness this. He had died just 5 years earlier. Maybe God waited for Enoch, Methuselah, and Lamech to die before the flood came. Now, I am here without these men of faith. God even said that he had seen that I was righteous. I spent the years before the flood in active obedience. Not only did I believe that God would send the flood, but I obeyed what God told me to do in preparation for it. When I received the message that I would be entering the ark, people stared and gawked every time they passed by. I could hear them starting to make silly and petty jokes about old crazy Noah. Everybody knows there is not going to be a flood of water. How can that even be? Yet the Bible says a flood of water came. The Lord shut me in. The same door that shut those on the outside out is the door that shut us on the inside in. The same waters that destroyed the world were the waters that lifted up the ark. I was 600 years old when the flood deluge of water came on the earth, covering all of the land. Then I and my sons and his wife and his sons his wives, with him entered the ark to escape the floodwaters. Of clean animals and animals that are not clean, and birds and fowls, and everything that crawls on the ground. They came, motivated by God, into the ark with 2 by 2, the male and the female, just as God had commanded me. And after the 7 days, God released the rain, and the floodwaters came on the earth. In the 600th year of my life, on the 17th day of the 2nd month, on that same day, all the fountains of the great deep, subterranean waters burst open, and the windows and floodgates of the heavens were opened. It rained on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. The animals, my family, and I waited on the ark for 7 days for the rain to come. It was a true test of faith to wait a week after more than 100 years of preparation. Then the windows of heaven were opened, the fountains of the great deep that were broken up. Waters came up from under the earth also, accompanied by great geological catastrophes. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights. This was a time of testing and purification, particularly before entering the new world. On the very day I and Shem and Ham, sons, and my wife, and the 3 wives of my sons with them, entered the ark, they, and every animal according to its kind, all the livestock according to their kinds, every moving thing that crawls on the earth according to its kind, and every bird according to its kind, every winged thing of every sort. So we went into the ark, 2 by 2 of all living beings in which there was the breath and spirit of life. those which entered, male and female of all flesh, creatures, entered as God had commanded me, and the Lord closed the door behind me. Everything was prepared exactly as the Lord had spoken. All was ready for the flood that God would bring upon the earth. I did not have to shut the door on anyone's salvation. God did it. We aren't usually the ones who handle disqualifying individuals from salvation. We should let God make that decision. God kept the door open until the last possible moment, but eventually it had to close. The door is either open or closed. For me, the ark was the ultimate salvation. But unfortunately for the rest of the world, it meant condemnation. Those who were not inside the ark had no opportunities for redemption. After the 120 years were over, God's Spirit ceased to strive with humanity. Beyond that door, death would rule without exception, yet there would be absolute tranquility within it. The flood, the great downpour of rain, was 40 days and nights on the earth, and the waters increased and lifted up the ark, and it floated high above the land. The waters became mighty and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the waters. The waters prevailed so greatly and were so mighty and overwhelming on the earth, so that all the high mountains everywhere under the heavens were covered. In fact, the waters became 15 cubits higher than the highest ground, and the mountains were covered. All living beings that moved on the earth perished, birds and cattle, domestic animals, wild animals, all things that swarm and crawl on the earth, and all mankind. Everything on the dry land, all in whose nostrils was the breath and spirit of life, died. God destroyed, blotted out, wiped away every living thing that was on the surface of the earth. Man and animals and the crawling things and the birds of the heavens were destroyed from the land. Only me and those who were with me in the ark remained alive. This was a global flood. It's hard to fathom how much rain fell as the mountains were completely covered. Despite the doubts and disbelief of many, God proved his faithfulness and fulfilled his promise after 120 years. The flood lasted 150 days without receding. Safe in the ark. During the catastrophe and judgment, my family and I were safe as we were shut in and sheltered from the storm and flood. God then focuses his attention on me again. Then God remembered me, every living thing, and all the animals with him in the ark. He was about to do a unique thing in our lives. God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters subsided. God never forgot me. He sustained me daily on the ark. But at this point, God again turned his active attention towards me. It was truly as if he remembered me again. I had been shut up in the ark for many a day, and at the right time, God thought of me. In the face of a natural disaster such as a flood, feeling powerless and overwhelmed is easy, but let's not forget that the Almighty, who created the expansive universe and our world, can calm even the most raging waters. His wisdom and might are beyond our understanding, and he can conquer any obstacle, no matter how daunting it may appear. The force of nature may seem intimidating, but remember, nothing is impossible for the divine force that governs our world. As the floodwaters recede, the ark rests on Mount Ararat. Picture this, a majestic mountain range, its northern and eastern slopes reaching up from the vast plain of the Aras River, soaring to a staggering 3,300 feet, 1,000 meters above sea level. To the southwest, the slopes rise from a breathtaking plain, standing at a dizzying 5,000 feet, 1,500 meters above sea level, with a diameter of approximately 25 miles. 40 kilometers. The Ararat Massif is a true wonder of nature, sure to leave you in awe of its sheer beauty and grandeur. Ararat, the very cradle of humanity, our own garden. The heavens roared with thunder as the fountains of the deep erupted, unleashing a deluge of water upon the earth. The rain beat down relentlessly for 150 endless days, threatening to submerge all life. But then, miraculously, the waters began to recede, slowly revealing the long-lost contours of the world. Finally, on the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on the majestic mountains of Ararat, a symbol of hope amidst the desolation. As the days passed, the waters continued to recede until at last, on the first day of the 10th month, the stunning sight of mountain peaks emerged in the distance, signaling the return of life to the earth. The relentless rain pouring had finally ceased, but the power behind it was still evident. It was none other than God's divine control that decided when the rain and other waters would flow and when they would stop. Mount Ararat was not an ideal location to disembark from the ark. Leaving the ark on a high altitude and mountainous terrain made it a challenging departure for all of us of the ark. However, if God intended to place the ark in that specific location, it was the perfect place to leave it. The animals would be able to go any direction from here. As the floodwaters receded, awe-inspiring magnitude emerged. The once concealed peaks of the mountains around the earth were gradually revealed. This massive worldwide flood was so intense that the mountaintops were initially submerged, hidden from view. But as the water steadily diminished, the mountains finally came back into sight, a testament to the force and relentlessness of the deluge that had swept across the land. After the passage of 40 days, I eagerly opened the window of the ark that I had so painstakingly crafted. With a sense of anticipation, I sent out a raven to explore the world beyond the ark. The raven flew back and forth, flapping its wings in the air, until the waters had dried up and the earth was exposed once again. I also sent out a dove from the ark to see if the waters had receded from the face of the ground, but the dove found no resting place for the sole of her feet, and she returned into the dark to him, for the waters were on the face of the whole earth. It appeared that the raven can fly for a long time without a need to land. Perhaps this was because the raven is a scavenger and might rest and feed upon dead floating carcasses. These particular birds will not be sufficient. We need to send a bird that will return to us. After weeks of being confined to the ark, we finally decided to send out a brave dove to see if the waters had receded. As she flew over the vast expanse of water, we anticipated her return, but unfortunately, the dove found no resting place for the sole of her feet and had to return to the ark. The floodwaters were still covering the entire face of the earth. The suspense was unbearable, and our hearts sank as we realized that our hope for survival was dwindling. I reached out and pulled her into the ark, holding her close, and then I waited with bated breath for 7 long days before sending out the dove once again. And after its mission, the dove returned with a freshly plucked olive leaf in its mouth. Now I know that the waters had finally receded from the earth. What a sight, a dove with an olive leaf. Being a clean, non-scavenging bird, the dove would not land upon the earth until there was a dry, suitable place to land. The dove patiently waits for the right moment to land on a dry and suitable ground, embodying the virtue of cleanliness and grace. But I wasn't done yet. I waited yet another 7 days and sent the dove out again, and this time it didn't return. I knew then that our journey was over, and we had finally found dry land. For the dove to not return means it has begun its life on earth again. There you have it. The raven and the dove were the first to start their new lives on the new earth. A lot must have changed. Very soon, the other animals will also start their new lives. God instructed me to enter the ark at a specific time, but I was not informed of the time when I should exit. It was necessary for me to know when to enter, and God made sure I knew that. However, it was not important for me to know when to come out, and so God did not reveal that to me. He always lets his people know what is practically good for them. And it came to pass in the 601st year, in the first month, the first day of the month, that the waters were dried up from the earth, and I withdrew the covering of the ark and looked, and indeed the surface of the ground was dry. Can you imagine the anticipation that filled my heart as I waited for the waters to recede? And then finally, after a while of being cooped up in the ark, it happened. However, we would still stay within the ark for a while. And in the 2nd month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth was dried. In addition, God spoke with me, telling me to go out of the ark, you and your wife, and your sons and their wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing from every flesh, including birds, animals, and every crawling thing that crawls on the land, so that they may reproduce in large numbers on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. I went out, and my wife and my sons and their wives with me, each and every animal, every crawling creature, every bird, and everything that moves on the land left the ark in groups, or families, consisting of different types and classifications. As the floods raged on, I bravely made my way into the ark on the 17th day of the second month of my 600th year of life. For a whole year, I battled against the unrelenting stormy seas, until finally, in the second month of my 601st year, I emerged victorious from the ark, triumphant and alive. It was a year of significant change, but I had survived to tell the tale. Picture this: the earth bursting with life as living creatures from the ark repopulate the planet, bringing back the vibrancy and diversity that was once lost. How compelling is that? Emerging from the confines of the ark, I stepped out into the vast world. I walked abroad, and the whole world was before him where to choose. God's covenant with me. With great devotion, I constructed a magnificent altar to the Lord and carefully selected only the finest, purest animals and birds to offer as burnt sacrifices. The flames leapt high into the sky as I humbly presented my offerings, my heart filled with reverence for the Almighty. It was a truly awe-inspiring moment that left me feeling deeply connected. The ultimate test of faith, a true sacrifice, was about to be made. With only 7 of each animal on the ark, the stakes were high. Yet, I knew what had to be done. I risked extinction by offering some of these animals, but I did it anyway. Why? Because I knew that costly sacrifice is what pleases God the most. Are you ready for an exciting challenge? To truly honor and connect with God, we must be willing to make sacrifices that cost us something. We are called to give generously of our resources and offer the sacrifice of praise to Him. So, let's take up the challenge and experience the thrill of giving our all to God. When it comes to pleasing God, it's not about giving Him just anything, but rather sacrificial giving that comes at a great cost. The Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, a soothing, satisfying scent, and the Lord said to Himself, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intent, strong inclination, desire of man's heart is wicked from his youth, and I will never again destroy every living thing as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, winter and summer, and day and night shall not cease. Wow! The extravagant offering brought immense joy to God. It was almost like the mouth-watering savor of the roasted meat filled the air, triggering an intense feeling of satisfaction in God's heart. He was so pleased that He made a magnificent promise to me and to all humanity. God promised that He would never again destroy every living thing on earth with a flood of such scale as He did before. He made this promise out of mercy, knowing that the inclination of man's heart is to do evil from his youth. Man will still do evil, but God has decided to spare humanity from this catastrophe. Behold, the Almighty showered His blessings upon me and my sons, commanding us to go forth and multiply, spreading our seed and filling the earth with our descendants. The Lord also said, And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and on all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is, its blood. The world was nothing like what I had known before. With a renewed mandate from God, it was a fresh start, a new beginning, and the possibilities were endless. This is just like when God had told Adam, Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth and subjugate it, putting it under your power, and rule over, dominate the fish of the sea, the birds of the air, and every living thing that moves upon the earth. Even as Adam received instructions for eating, so did I. God told Adam, Behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the surface of the entire earth, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed, it shall be food for you. Yet now I received specific permission to eat animals. God also commanded me that if animals were killed and eaten, there must be a proper respect for the blood. The blood is vital. Blood is the essence of life, so it's no wonder it deserves utmost reverence. Whether it's the blood of an animal or a human, it symbolizes the very core of existence. When we spill blood, we're taking away life itself. It's not about superstition or mysticism. It's about recognizing the sanctity of all life. There were some that practiced ingesting blood, but this was not the way of the Lord. The Lord said, Surely for your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of man. From the hand of every man's brother I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. And as for you, be fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply in it. As per God's commandment, if someone's blood is shed, then there must be an investigation into the matter. This is because God has created man in his own image, and therefore human life is inherently valuable and cannot be taken without being accountable to God. The words, "By man his blood shall be shed," carry a powerful message. They remind us that life is precious and must be protected at all costs. When a heinous crime like murder is committed, God says the perpetrator deserves nothing less than the ultimate punishment, the death penalty. To see the strength of God's command, he even required a reckoning for the life of man from every beast. God does not condone the unlawful slaying of any kind. Be fruitful and multiply. This point was repeated for emphasis, and it was because the situation is critical. Our planet desperately needs to be repopulated, and we are the only ones that will guarantee the continuation of our own kind. God makes a covenant with man and with all of creation. Then God spoke to me and to my sons with, saying, "Now behold, I am establishing my covenant, binding agreement, solemn promise, with you and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and the wild animals of the earth along with you, of everything that comes out of the ark, every living creature of the earth. I will establish my covenant with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by the water of a flood, nor shall there ever again be a flood to destroy and ruin the earth." God made a promise that he would never again destroy the world with a flood? That's right. The Almighty made this promise as a repetition and clarification of his earlier covenant. God did not believe that he had done something wrong or too harsh by sending the flood. He made a promise to ensure that the same evil conditions that existed in the pre-flood world would never be replicated exactly. And God said, "This is the token, visible symbol, memorial of the solemn covenant which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I set my rainbow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of a covenant between me and the earth. It shall come about, when I bring clouds over the earth, that the rainbow shall be seen in the clouds, and I will compassionately remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And never again will the water become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the rainbow is in the clouds and I look at it, I will solemnly remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." And God said to me, "This rainbow is the sign of the covenant, solemn pledge, binding agreement, which I have established between me and all living things on the earth." Imagine this, an incredible covenant that was not only made between God and humankind, but also between God and every living creature that walks, crawls, flies, and swims on this planet. Yes, the promise was even made to the earth itself. Because the blanket of water, vapors, was released in the flood and the water cycle of the earth changed after the flood, this may be the first occurrence of a rainbow. God used the rainbow as a sign to Noah and all generations that he would be faithful to his covenant. And there it was, the first rainbow. Can you imagine witnessing the very first rainbow that appeared on our planet? And what's even more thrilling is that God chose this magnificent creation as a sign of his faithfulness to me and all generations that followed. The rainbow is also a promise to you. When you see a rainbow, remember my epic story. Whenever we catch a glimpse of a rainbow, it serves as a powerful reminder of God's unwavering faithfulness in the fulfillment of all his promises. In fact, he assures us that his covenant of peace with humanity is just as unshakable as his covenant with me and all subsequent generations. All this came with its challenges. I no longer had any peers. I was the oldest man in the world, everyone was dead, and soon something very sad was about to happen. This will affect my sons, your ancestors. My sons who came out of the ark were Shem and Ham and Japheth, and from these men the whole earth will be populated and scattered with inhabitants. My children would be the foundation of the world. Canaan, my grandson, would be cursed as a result of what transpired as a result of that catastrophe. I braved the aftermath of the catastrophic flood and emerged into a brand new world, determined to carve out a new life for myself and my loved ones. With boundless energy and enthusiasm, I set out on a thrilling adventure of exploration and discovery, planting a multitude of crops, including a magnificent vineyard that promised to yield a bountiful harvest. I used the grapes to make wine. I drank the wine, became drunk, and lay bare in my tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw by accident my nakedness, and to my shame, told his two brothers outside. So Shem and Japheth took a robe and put it on both their shoulders, and walked backwards and covered my nakedness. Their faces were turned away so that they did not see their father's nakedness. Ham is said to have told with delight what he observed in my tent. He had made up his mind to make fun of me, his father, and in the process he was undermining my authority as a man of God. Ham's response shows his lack of respect for me. When I awoke from his wine-induced stupor, I knew what my younger son Ham had done to me, so I said, "Cursed be Canaan, the son of Ham. A servant of servants, he shall be to his brothers." I also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge the land of Japheth, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." The judgment of this was quite severe. Canaan was going to live a life of servitude to Shem. However, this was not the end of evil in the world. After years of populating the earth, a man called Nimrod was born, and this changed everything that we understood. Nimrod was born into a new world, recently recreated by God after his judgment had rendered the old world devoid of much human and animal life. Nimrod founded two of the most powerful empires in history. Nimrod's actions led many people away from God. First, what does the name Nimrod mean? It comes from the Hebrew verb marad, meaning rebel. At first, the new world was free from the evil that existed in the pre-Diluvian world. Unfortunately, this innocence did not last very long. Nimrod was my great-grandson through the line of Cush. The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sapta, Rama, and Saptika, and the sons of Rama were Sheba and Dedan. Now Cush fathered Nimrod. Nimrod was a skilled and ambitious leader who founded the infamous city of Babel and many others. He was also known for his great physical and mental strength. Men no longer trusted in God, but rather in their prowess and ability, an attitude to which Nimrod tried to convert the whole world. The Tower of Babel. After the destruction of the world by the flood, the next incident that affected God deeply was the building of the Tower of Babel. People wanted to build the tower that reached into God's sphere of heaven, effectively to challenge heaven. Now the whole earth spoke one language and used the same words, vocabulary. And as people journeyed eastward, they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they settled there. They said one to another, "Come, let us make bricks and fire them thoroughly in a kiln, to harden and strengthen them." So they used brick for stone as building material, and they used tar, bitumen, asphalt for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build a city for ourselves, and a tower whose top will reach into the heavens, and let us make a famous name for ourselves, so that we will not be scattered into separate groups and be dispersed over the surface of the entire earth, as the Lord instructed." Now the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, "Behold, they are one unified people, and they all have the same language. This is only the beginning of what they will do in rebellion against me. And now, no evil thing they imagine they can do will be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse and mix up their language, so that they will not understand one another's speech." So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the surface of the entire earth, and they stopped building the city. Therefore the name of the city was Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the entire earth, and from that place the Lord scattered and dispersed them over the surface of all the earth. The Tower of Babel offended God very profoundly. He said that if he let them continue, there was no telling where it would end. They could no longer understand each other. From then on, humanity split, scattering and speaking different languages. Nevertheless, despite his strength and grandeur, Nimrod's power ultimately proved insignificant because God's power is greater than any human's and cannot be hindered. Although Nimrod was an impressive hunter in the eyes of the Lord, wisdom dictates that humility towards God is essential. Genesis chapter 10, verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. The beginning of his kingdom was Babylon and Erech, and Akkad and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Babylon is the capital of the empire which would eventually destroy Judah. It is in southern Mesopotamia. The name Babel means God's gate. The people were constructing a tower to honor a false religion. Although the word Babel means gate of God, it was not built to get closer to the one true God revealed in the pages of the Bible. It was built in opposition to him. The tower was a work of pride. The tower was constructed to showcase human achievement. Nonetheless, human pride continues to oppose the Lord's will to this day. God's will for me and my descendants was to populate the earth. But as the people gathered on the plain of Shinar, they had no interest in reaching out around the world to settle in it. They had no interest in caring for the world that God had majestically placed before them. Indeed, they rebelled. In that declaration, we can see that the people's will was opposed to God's will. That should not surprise us, because humanity will always oppose God's will for them apart from saving grace through faith in Jesus Christ. However, the passage clearly teaches that the Lord's will always triumphs, and he is unfazed by humanity's efforts to defy his will. However, their attempts were thwarted by the Lord. It was no difficult task for the Lord to halt the progress of the Tower of Babel. The Lord scattered the people across the face of the earth and caused them to stop building the city because the Lord confused the entire world's language. Imagine how amazing that must have been for the people. How surprised they must have been when God appeared and muddled their languages. It was a simple thing for God. His will and his plans cannot be stopped. After 3 centuries since the Great Flood, my time in this world is coming to a thrilling end. With all that said, who am I? Practically speaking, I am an example of a life of faith. By faith, I warned about things not yet seen. In holy fear built an ark to save my family. By faith, I condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. I didn't need to test God before going into action. When God spoke, I listened. I didn't need to hesitate or question him. This was typical of my life. I was part of the godly line of Seth, of whom it was said, "At that time men began to call upon the name of the Lord." I was the result of generational obedience and faithfulness towards God. In other words, be right with God, be right with others, and have a reverent and worshipful relationship with God. Behold, the Lord Almighty has the power to deliver the righteous from all sorts of trials and tribulations. And as I reflected on my life, it's a stark reminder that sin will not go unpunished. The day of reckoning is approaching fast. My name is Noah, and this is my story.